Welcome around the Workstand. The first time in 2026. David, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm excited. So this become a bit of an annual thing where we look back on the year that just ended. And of course, it's a little later than usual. It's late January 2026, which is a weird thing to say, 2026. I'm a huge fan of the Olympics, and it's an Olympic year, a Winter Olympic year, although I do no
World
winter
Cup,
sports.
too.
World Cup,
this year,
FIFA World Cup as well.
I'm
Yeah.
big on that. Yeah. So,
F1 is big changes, car changes this year, so that's going to be fun. And we just finished the college national championship game last night. My wife's a big football fan, so we watched all that. So, exciting times. But we're going to spend a little time and talk about the year that just finished up. And often we get deep into a whole bunch of numbers. I think we're going to avoid that this year, largely because we can talk about the industry in general, but each store experiences that a little differently and in their own way. So we're going to spend a little more time talking about the numbers on the Workstand platform and the work you and I have been doing and a lot of others here throughout the year to help merchants participate more in that those sales. So it seemed like, and you tell me, but you and I both talked to me and you and Brian probably talked to more merchants in a given year than anybody at the company. And it seemed to me that more than previous years, the spread's out there. I mean, there's a whole lot of stores that this was a terrible year and a whole lot of stores that were this was a great year. And to me anyway, there was a bigger lean towards the stores that had a pretty good year in store this year. What were you hearing as you talked to stores this year?
Yeah, there was some inventory challenges with, stores being over inventoried into products, and some suppliers didn't have some products as well. So they were kind of challenged in both directions, depending on who I talked to and the brands that they worked with. But yeah, I think for the most part, it was a good year for most of my dealers I worked for and talked to. For sure.
Yeah, and I felt like the beginning of the year, the inventory challenge was still front and center with almost everybody. But it seemed like by the summer, as summer picked up, a lot of the stores had worked their way individually out of some of those inventory challenges and had made good decisions and not loaded themselves back up. So as I was talking to stores in the fourth quarter, a lot of them felt like they had that pretty well under control. Did you see that same sort of shift throughout the season, or were you still hearing those challenges towards the end of the year?
Depending on who I talked to, if I talked to a dealer who I've been talking to throughout the year, yes, they worked those problems out. But as I get new clients and I talk to new customers who are interested in doing more in e-commerce, they still have those challenges just because they just don't really know what to do and how to achieve those results. So.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it seems obvious. Don't have a bunch of inventory you can't move. But it's pretty easy to slide into that if you're not intentionally focused on it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's move into what we saw on the Workstand platform. That's the part that we have the most direct interaction with. And I thought, regardless of the industry-wide numbers, which I don't think were awesome across the board, we had a pretty good year on the platform. I mean, sales dollars up almost 7.5% year over year over 2024. That was pretty strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Sales dollars were up 7.5%, like you said. Orders were up also about 4% in total. So it's great year for e-commerce. So.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to say the dollars were up, but that can be influenced by the categories that we see. I mean, e-bikes remain strong, mountain bikes remain strong, the high end of product remains strong. So it's one thing to say, well, dollars were up. That might indicate the number of orders could have been down, et cetera. But units were up, order values were up, and overall sales were up. The units and orders were up about almost 4%, 3.7%. So clearly that means that the average order values were higher, but up across the board. And I thought that was pretty strong. It wasn't a terrible year in 2024, so it was pretty good to have that kind of growth across our platform in 1 year.
Yeah, and I talked to Matt Viara, who is our Google Ads manager, and they saw a growth in ads as well. So it all plays into it, right? You do more in ads, you get more in sales. So it all kind of has a good parallel trend. So
that is a theme we have seen since the explosion of the pandemic began to wear off, and that the those who have had intentional marketing, and that would include things like paid Google ad strategies, email marketing strategies, good content strategies, those that have those intentional strategies and were consistent with it have thoroughly outperformed those that had a hope as a strategy or just expected it to grow as part of the business without, and we talk about this a lot too. The e-commerce, the online sales is a contact sport. And so it takes, just like you would if you opened a new location. I mean, you would think about, how do I capitalize this new location? What am I going to spend on the build out to get this place ready? How am I going to staff it? What brands, etc. You think about all that stuff if you were opening a new store or a new location. And I think the moral of the story is the stores that treat their online sales in that same manner are the ones that end up having the success. I think that's fair to say.
Very fair to say. Yeah, I mean it's exactly what it's fair to say. And really, it's just taking risk, right? You take a risk opening up a new location, opening up new e-commerce locations the same way. You got to take a risk and feel it's out, and feel out the the return, and feel out the expenses you have going on, and just trying different things, testing new ideas and thoughts. So
yeah. Not to say that, I think that it's certainly still true that having your inventory online, whether it's Workstand or whatever platform, having your availability and your pricing is a key driver to in-store traffic, because shoppers just by and large these days are not just blindly showing up in stores. They're pulling their phone out and they're searching for the things they want, be that a tune-up, a repair, or a new gravel bike or an e-bike. Having that product out there is the key driver these days to being visible in those searches and getting people in the store. So there's something to be said for just taking that step. It's huge.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for simply connecting that inventory to Google so that it can consume it for its free shopping programs and all the places it uses that. But true sales growth, using digital presence and digital advertising as a true tool to grow is a contact sport. So I think it's multi-levels. And we have a lot of stores that they get the website up, they connect their inventory, they're happy. They get some ancillary orders because it's convenient and people like that. That's great. And that's all they really want out of it, is to drive store traffic and have it assist in-store sales growth, which it absolutely will. But when you want that extra piece, that's where you and I and Brian come into the work that we do and Matt to help grow those sales.
And one thing you touched on a little bit was the free local listings. I can't speak more enough about that and how great that is. We see like sales after sales after sales come through those free local listings, and they're bike sales, they're P&A sales, they're everything. So if you're a store and you're not utilizing that free Google local listings feature, like, please give us a call, get it set up. It's very easy. And
we make it easy. It's incredibly complicated to set Google Merchant Center up.
Yeah. But again, it's ultimately at the end of the day, it's free to post on there, and it converts. So
yeah, and I always am clear to point out that free local listing, free shopping, whatever Google calls it this week, that's never going to be in that prime location at the very top of the page. You pay to get in there. But the setup process is the same. You got to connect that inventory, set Google Merchant Center up. When you decide to do paid ads, which we certainly recommend stores do, that's when you can get into those prime placements. But Google will use that product data all over the place, and it does move the needle. It is obvious to see. It's not, you can't build your entire growth strategy off of free listings, but it certainly is worth getting it set up.
Yeah, 100%. So and you could see it. It's in analytics, you could see those results come through, and you can see where those people are buying from and your conversions are at. So it's a real thing for sure.
Yeah.
So
cool. Absolutely. One of the things you'd made a note of that I wanted to touch base on was that mountain bike units were the largest category in 2025. Talk a little bit about that and what other categories had big increases last year, because one of those categories was a little surprising to me.
So mountain bike units, and this is again hardtails, non-e mountain bikes. So just hardtails, full suspension mountain bikes are our biggest category by units and also by dollars. So second to that, e-bikes is also the next biggest one. That's all e-bikes, including cruisers, road bikes, gravel bikes, all that. But the other one that struck out to me was pretty interesting was electronics. So this is
Yeah.
computers, right? Huge increase from 2024. We saw a 24% increase from 2024. So a lot of computers. I when I talk to customers for the first time, or whatever, Garmin always comes up, and they're always afraid of shipping Garmin. Garmin, historically has been, you
A
see
huge
Garmin order,
fraud.
it's fraud, right? Like just,
Yeah.
in years past, even in my history, working in retail, you see Garmin order, you just write it off, like, oh, done. Like, we're not shipping it, cancel it right away. You sirens go off, all that stuff. Now, people are buying Garmin, everywhere. I see it all the time.
Legitimately.
And yeah, and other, not just Garmin too, but, Wahoo and everything
Yeah.
else too. So,
It used to be a Garmin, a Wahoo, a GoPro. If that showed up, just cancel the order. That is just not the case. I don't know when that happened. I did not realize that shift had happened, but
Yeah.
it was shocking when I saw that electronics were up because so many stores gave up on that. So I'm glad whoever hung out and kept doing it did it. It's good to know.
yeah.
But,
And I think,
me-
as we're we'll kind of get into this a little bit, but as as retailers start taking risks and try things out, and one of those is offering a discount from your website in exchange for an email address that is really really works really well. Garmin customers see that and they say, oh, 10% off. You can't get 10% off anywhere with Garmin these days, throughout the year. And yeah, the margin's already tight. But it's a risk, but people are selling these units, so
it's a customer acquisition strategy, and that's another one of those things where I think historically bike shops haven't thought a lot about that. People wanted a bike, they would seek out a bike shop. We didn't back in the day. We didn't recommend high dollar real estate and prominent locations. It was not that thing. I think that's changed a lot, and that particularly after the pandemic, and that. It's not a separate purchase.
Right.
The same person that's shopping for a nice road bike is also shopping in the Apple store, and they're also going to Lowe's and buying things online, and it's just kind of across the board. And so maybe that's part of that change, is that the customer base is a little different than it was before. It's a broader customer base, and it's really just a purchase now. So we have to think about that as we think about how we market a local bike shop, because it is different. I mean, you're competing with video games and everything else now, and so it helps to think that way. And I'm still just can't. I mean, so many years, now I want to know, because the other thing that used to be that default, it's a fraud order or group set. So if you had somebody bought a SRAM Red group, fraud.
yeah. Right.
I wonder if that's changed. I didn't look deep enough in the data to see that.
I haven't seen that as far as the data on increase, but when it comes to fraud, to me, I see very, very few cases of fraud these days. It's usually when you see it, it's pretty clear and upfront. Like, there's no last name, or it's like McLovin is a first name, and of course it's going to be a fraud, or there's some weird thing about it. But fraud is just not really on our radars that much anymore. It's pretty gone away. Pretty.
I don't know if I'm going to join you quite that optimistically yet. I think it's still there. It's absolutely, from my time here, it is absolutely less of an issue than it was 5 or 8 years ago. I don't know if it's just a relative, because the amounts, we have so many more orders going through the platform. The dollar amounts are larger. There's a bigger client base than there was 10 years ago. I don't know if it's just a relative thing, but I still want retailers to pay attention.
Sure, of course. Yeah. And also
but the tools are better.
Yeah, and
the tools are better too.
Right. Like Stripe. Stripe has awesome, fraud protection services built into it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of orders that it doesn't even come through our platform. It gets denied before it even gets submitted. So.
And I will say, kind of in line with what you're saying, I don't recall this year, because there was a trend where they were brazen enough to show up in a store for an order pickup and store order, but it seems like everybody's got their processes dialed to where I don't think I heard that at all this year, that somebody lost an e-bike to a pickup and store order like we had in a couple of years before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Anyway, pay attention, but it's better than it was. And if that was the reason and it was a lot of the reasons some stores walked away, if it was because of fraud, then realize that that's something that's getting better over time, and maybe come back and look at that process again.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing, the last little section I wanted us to cover was, and we've talked a lot about it so far, but just to have it be consistent and concise, let's talk about what we saw working, because your services, and you've been here with us, which is hard to remember because we've all worked with you for so long when you were in the stores, but just over a year where you're in this role as the key accounts advisor and working with clients with our advisory services. So I'm wondering about, with a year under your belt, talking to a broader range of stores than you would have before, what are the things that are working? What's coming up more often as you talk to these dealers? What can you share with the listeners that can help their business?
Yeah, well, usually when I first dive into a point of sale, when I'm working with a client, we look at the aged inventory and things that we need to get rid of because it's holding up cash, right? The cash flow is tight, during certain parts of the year, and we just need to turn cash. So, really looking at the aged inventory, making sure it's on the site at a discounted price, at a very competitive price, is number one. Really, price is king. So it's that. It's taking risks and adjusting our shipping costs. Again, being competitive with our competitors, right? So making sure that we're not overinflating our shipping costs. I think oftentimes we even make money on shipping. Honestly, right? It'll cost $6 to ship an item, through a third party service, and we're charging $10-15 to a customer, right? And but at the end of the day, we're trying to make it so we come out even, right? Is a goal. But that's again, taking some risks there. Again, looking at ad spend and making strategic moves with our ads, and then also buying online has been a pretty big strong key for some of our retailers. They're buying some sale items from brands, from manufacturers, and really doing well with that with those sales.
You mean so buying specifically because there's a deal and you can turn that on the site?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that's interesting to hear. And I wanted to talk about, so it came up with the merchant that asked me about budgets. And we used to talk a lot about marketing budgets in general as a percentage of revenue. And it dawned on me when they asked me that question. I don't know that I've had that discussion in a while, but I don't know what you think about that. But I'd like to get back to that because I think that's part of an intentional strategy. Is saying last year or last 3 years revenue average is X. My goals for this year are a 10% increase. That means at 2% or 3%, I need to be spending this much money on dollars. And we used to talk about 1.5% to 2%. Then it got to around 4% for the successful stores. Do you have a thought on that? This is a blind question. I apologize for sneaking up.
No,
on
you're good. No. I typically see 3 to 4% is kind of where most stores are somewhat comfortable with, but I wouldn't let the budget be, it, right? I mean, there's always, if there's room to increase, we see stores and they're hitting some pretty awesome return on investment with their ad spend, the ROAS, and it's like, hey, why? Let's not slow down here. Let's bump up the ad spend to get more. We might see a decrease in the return percentage, but you'll see more sales overall. So. I like that, obviously having the budget's great, not against budgets, but I'm always hesitant to talk about budget just because it's, we want to see where the market takes us and go from there.
That's fair. And I think it is absolutely true that regardless of a budget, there's always something that can be done to improve things. And there is a diminishing return, but that's based on data. So it's okay if we get to a point where it may not make sense to spend more in this particular area, but I do like talking about a budget because I want to be realistic. It's not realistic to think somebody can spend $300 a month on ads and grow their business to $1 million a year on their website. That's not realistic.
Correct.
So I do want to be realistic about it, but you are 100% correct. Don't let budget stop you. Even if, look, I've got the website, I can't spend any more. There's still things you can do to more effectively use the tools we make available as Workstand to grow sales. So don't let budget get in the way, but also know that, we have to be somewhat realistic and that you can't get something for nothing in most cases.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I hear, oftentimes is, we did A, B, and C. where are sales at, right? Well, you got to, it's a work in progress for one, but two, you got to, put more into it. You got to put more skin into the game, but you can't just turn things on and expect things to kind of just flow in. So, expectations definitely need to be set. Yeah.
Time is definitely one of the considerations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dollars,
sure.
effort, and how long will you do that to see the return? Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Excellent. Before we close it up, as happens every time this year, we've got a schedule coming up of trade shows and events that we'll be at, including this year some virtual events. Brian and I were on the NBDA's RIA. I think they call it RIA as the Retailer Excellence Award program. So Brian and I got to hang out on an NBDA session not long ago and talk about digital marketing and websites and all that good stuff. You have a webinar coming up with the NBDA soon as part of a series we're doing, right?
Yeah, on the January 26th, we're going to do a webinar focused on data. It'll be somewhat of a short one. It'll be part of a series, but just talking about data, how to use it, make sure you have the right data, and just not really be afraid of it, and how to use it to your benefit to help your business.
Cool. I'll put a link below to that webinar. If you're an NBDA person and want to sign up for that webinar, that'd be good. I signed up today, so I can watch you and learn more. And then CABDA is coming up, so we'll have folks at CABDA, I think both Midwest and what do they call the West? They call the one in
West,
Las Vegas?
yeah, the one in Vegas, yeah.
So we'll have teams there. I don't know who exactly. I know Brian will be at them all. I don't know if you're going or not, but we'll firm that up. And then Frostbite in February, we'll have a team there as well.
I should be there as well. So
I'll put that stuff in the notes. Certainly, there's always a couple of parts that usually we've got a booth somewhere and we've staffed that. But Brian Rawlings is usually there. Maybe you'll be there this year. I don't know if I'll go. But stop by the booth and chat about if you're an existing client, any questions you have. If you're not a Workstand client, you should be. So stop by and talk to them. Brian and David can get you fixed up there. We'll keep putting those out in blog posts and make sure people know where I'll put this information in the notes below. And then you and I talked about something as we close it all up. We'd like more questions. And I used to ask for this all the time, and we just don't get that many questions. Every once in a while we get a question. But if you do have a question for David or me or for Workstand in general, put it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you just want to email it, you can send that to podcast@workstand.com. That's the easiest thing to remember. But david.m or mark.s at Workstand, you can send it to us directly. But we do love the questions, and don't feel like there's any obligation to a question. If you're not a Workstand client and you just have a question, we're happy to talk about it. We are, to some extent, salespeople. We may eventually try and sell you something, but we do just want to answer the question. So please don't hesitate and don't let the fact that you are or aren't an existing client stop you from asking that question.
If you have any comments too, put those comments in the comment box below, right? Like, what do the influencers do these days?
Yeah.
Subscribe, hit the like button below or something like that or something. I don't know.
Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, mash the button, smash whatever those people say. Please do those things, but it's fun. The podcast comes up every once in a while. We've done this. I think this is the 5th year we've started. We've had some version of a podcast, so it's fun. But if you have questions, we certainly want to help. We certainly want more topics to talk about. So if you think of something that you'd like Workstand's input on, please put that in the comments. We'll figure out how to share some information on that.
That'd be great.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you around the Workstand.
All right. See you guys.